add before we kick off our conversation?
Yes, yeah. So the bulk of today is really to learn from two incredible examples of first generation college graduates who are going to share about their experience navigating college life. Before we get there, and I also want Estefania to share more about her role in the LIT program too. I just wanted to encourage you all that so this program really is what's unique about Mission Scholars. We don't stop once students get to college. We're with you all 4 years of college. And we really want to support you in achieving your goals and being able to launch your career. So how do we do that is helping you secure internships each summer. You have 3 summers that you're in college, right? And it's really important to do some kind of career building opportunity in your field each of those summers. So our class of 2020, I think we have a few students. Johan, it looks like Vanessa's on here. They participated in 1 year of the LIT program last year, and all of them did some form of career building opportunity this summer. Some of them had internships in public health and computer science. Some of them worked jobs in administration and then had volunteer opportunities in their field. So that's what you all have to look forward to. Oh, Jackie also had a marketing internship this summer. I just saw her on there. And I know some of you are just starting freshman year and you're just thinking about classes and day to day, and you might be thinking, why are they already talking to me about my career and next summer's internship? But we are here to tell you it is not too early. We want to make sure you all are competitive internship applicants. So that's why we will be giving you the tools and support to make you ready for summer internships. So it's not too early. I hope that gives you some more context of why we're here and what we're doing. I can share more of the schedule and the admin stuff at the end, and I'll put it in an email as well. But that's all I have to say. We're really excited about the LIT program, and we have a great team of LIT mentors and advisors, including Paige, Kevin, Monica, who you'll meet soon, Colleen, and Estefania as well. So Estefania, I'll pass it over to you for next steps.
Sure. So I think I've met most of you, whether it's through the LIT program already or as you were going through the financial aid process for our now college freshmen. So basically, I'm Mission Scholars like #1 fan. And that started, I think, when Cassie and Kim took me on when they were tutoring me and helping me through the college application experience, I think, maybe 8 years ago. And so for background, I'm also first gen. My family immigrated from Mexico and no one talked about college. They told me school was important. You know, you get into college, you go, and then there's this whole other world. So you're trying to manage how to go through college successfully. And you don't realize 4 years go by so fast. And then there's a career on the other side that you're supposed to get and work your way towards. And so really what the LIT program is about is how do you, I think we all look back and say, oh, I wish I would have known that going through college. And so hopefully this helps fill the gap. And I think the part that's most exciting is while you go throughout college, you make friends along the way, and a lot of them you learn from each other. And that's what Elizabeth and Gino are to me. I learn from them every single time I talk to them. I know we're peers and friends, but they really are role models. And so I'm excited for you all to meet them. And since they're my friends, I can tell you, you can ask them anything. We all come from similar backgrounds. And so the hope is today we can just have honest conversations about what it's like to be first gen. And even though you're in high school, you're not that far away from this. So I'm hoping, let's see, maybe we can start with Gino and Elizabeth giving an introduction on whatever you want to share, maybe your background, where you went to school, what you're doing now. And then maybe we can start with just one thing, which is at the end of your intro, what was the hardest part of college and that transition, and how did you overcome it? Gina, do you want to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gino. Thank you for having me tonight. I'll give a forewarning before I do my intro that I'm on a lot of meetings in my day job, which kind of require me to be a little bit more formal. So I'm going to try my best to not be as formal and really just kind of give you guys, my authentic, true self. Because I was once in your shoes, once upon a time, whether you're in high school or you're in college right now. Um, but anyway, I'm first generation as well. I was born in Mexico. I moved to the States with my family when I was 6 years old. So anybody that has a similar story, I definitely identify with you in terms of growing up here, having to learn English, assimilating, and my parents moved to the East Coast, which specifically to Maryland, and there wasn't a lot of Latino population here growing up. So I kind of was like always dealing with the fact that like 9 times out of 10 in any classroom in any kind of different environment setting, I was usually the only Latino. So that was pretty interesting, growing up here. But I had a traditional K through 12 education in terms of high school. Something Estefania said really hit me in terms of I think being the child of first generation parents and being here, you kind of always get hit with that whole concept of the thing to do is to go to college. But my parents, they were high school dropouts in their home country. They didn't know anything about going to college here, so I didn't really get a lot of direct information from them. And then I actually, when I was going through my K through 12 education, I never once had anybody really take the time to sit me down and say like, hey, this is the importance of college. Like these are majors. These are like all the different things you can consider. It was a lot of just kind of figuring things out on my own. And I ended up going to community college first out of high school. So I attended a local community college here in my hometown, Frederick, Maryland, and I did business administration for my associate's degree. So Maryland has a pretty cool program where if you get your associates first, then you can do an automatic transfer to pretty much any of the in-state schools. So after I graduated from community college, I went to University of Maryland as a junior and a senior, and there I studied. I did a major in econ and I did a minor in Latino studies. Um, the point about the internships, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, I remember getting there for my junior year, and I was freaking out because at that point, like I hadn't done an internship yet, and I was everybody was talking about like internships, and people were talking about how like they did an internship as early as like their freshman year. So I kind of felt like I was a little bit behind in that sense. But I ended up landing an internship between my junior and senior year with a bank. It was a smaller bank, but one of the benefits of that was I got exposed to a lot of different parts of the company. So I got really familiar with just kind of what is referred to as the primary market in real estate. And then through that, when Freddie Mac came to my school my senior year
Yay.
for a career fair, I ended up, going to the table, telling them about my past experiences, and they thought that it was a good fit for me to at least interview. So I got an offer and I started my career with Freddie Mac right out of school. That's I don't want to get too much into all the career stuff right now. I can if you guys want me to, but I think the important part is just that the internship was really critical for me to kind of get that first career opportunity out of school. And that's where I met Estefania. And I've always really been into volunteering for specifically first generation students. I think it's really important to give back, especially because of that point of us not having as much access to information. So I think when you know that it was so hard for you to kind of navigate your way through, how much of a difference it would have made, even if just one person kind of took the time to talk to you and stuff. I think it's just as important for you to make sure that you're turning around and lending a hand to somebody else. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Take it away,
do I
Elizabeth.
go? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's your turn.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Anyway, it's been a long day. Yeah, so I'm so excited to get to meet all of you. Estefania is my temporary roommate right now. So when she says you guys can ask me anything, you literally can. So here's my quick 60-second background story. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, which is an hour north of the US-Mexico border. My parents were Mexican immigrants. And there was always something going on in Arizona in regards to immigration. And so that was like a big part of my life. And I think one of my greatest motivators, and that became even more present because when I was 15, my parents had issues with immigration and they were forced to return to Mexico. Because my brother and I were US citizens, I was 15 and he was 8, so he went with my parents, but I really wanted to figure out a way to stay in the US and pursue my education. So um, I kind of house hopped and went through some bouts of, homelessness that were difficult in their own ways, but with like the main thought of being like, school is my way out. School is going to be my ticket to a better life. I didn't exactly know what that meant. I just knew that I had to graduate and get to a school. And so I'm so glad that this program follows you guys throughout college, because after I got to college, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so I eventually graduated. I went to the University of Pennsylvania from Arizona. It was an Ivy League school. I was like the 1% of the poorest with the 1% of the richest in the country. So there was a huge difference in socioeconomic status and cultural backgrounds and my understanding of how the world functioned. And so it was very difficult. And I ended up studying philosophy, politics, and economics. It was a mixture of everything, which was great for me because I was always incredibly indecisive. I, at one point, wanted to do pre-med and then environmental studies, and I was just a hot mess. I did start interning really early on because I knew that once I graduated, I would have to support my family. And I don't know if that's something that many of you share, but for me, it was never about what I wanted to do necessarily, even though that was probably like my thought process in high school. It was eventually turned into what will make me the most money to support my family. I interned with Wells Fargo as a sophomore during one of their like programs. I did have like a freshman to sophomore like fellowship program, which was really helpful to get those sophomore internships, and then kind of continued interning with Wells Fargo, did sales and trading there. Eventually, I did go full time there. I was at Wells Fargo for about 3 years doing sales and trading in like a very like niche finance role where again I was the only Latina on the trading floor, which was super interesting and came with a lot of interesting stories and experiences. And I hated it. I hated finance. I just did it for the money. And I was very clear to myself and to others about that. I was like, I don't like being here. I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like the people that I'm working for. Eventually I did. So I was able to switch. So I recently started working at Facebook. I am a product manager that is rotating right now across 3 different teams to kind of ramp up. My first team is Watch International, which is really cool. So we're trying to compete basically with YouTube and TikTok. So I'm really competitive and I love fighting. And so this is like perfect for somebody as petty as me. But at the same time, I also get to create really cool products for people in India and Mexico. And like the idea of being able to, make a feature more accessible for people in my home country, for my parents, is really cool. And being able to tell my parents like, oh, I made this feature for you possible so that you could see movies that were normally never subtitled or had availability to be in the Spanish language. Now you can watch them and we can watch the same shows together. And so I think going from one big corporation to another, there's always things with corporations, and Facebook obviously has a reputation, but the fact that I get to work on stuff that matters to me is really cool. And so that's what I'm doing now. I did hear that somebody wanted to be a novelist. I am also a writer on the side. I'm writing a memoir through St. Martin's Press, and I'm happy to talk about the publishing industry, which is a whole other behemoth and is very intense, but also like just crazy. So I have like some knowledge on that if I'm also happy to talk about. So finance, writing, tech, let me know.
Thanks, both of you. I know I missed a few scholars that were either rolling in or I lost you. So if Maria Elena wants to introduce herself and then Maria Rojas after and Vanessa.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Maria Elena. I am currently at USC and what was the other
Career
major?
interest.
Career.
A
Sure.
career entrance. I am interested in going to the biomedical engineering field. Currently taking a couple of those classes right
Okay.
now.
Cool. Maria Rojas.
Yeah, sorry, got here a bit late. I'm currently at Berkeley and I'm planning on majoring in econ, but I'm not really sure about like my career field. So,
All right. And then Vanessa.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm currently a sophomore at Azusa Pacific University, and my major is nursing.
All right. And then Julissa. Okay, she might be on mute. So I know we heard a few introductions from Gino and Elizabeth. There's clearly so many parts that we could dig into. We have a few questions, but if students have questions right now, I think it's better to address those. So I know there's a raise your hand function in Zoom. If you want to raise your hand now, Isabella, I think you had a question. Maybe you'll go first. No, you didn't? Okay. You sure? Sorry, she's my sister. I like to pick on her. Okay, are there any questions right now or should we go into almost a prompted one? Okay, so let's see, and maybe Gina, you can start. So what's like when we're going through all this, what would be the number one piece of advice you'd give a student or an incoming freshman? And then Elizabeth, you can go after.
Um, it's a really good question. I think I would say that it is really never too early, especially if you happen to know exactly what you want to do. It's never too early to start researching companies. It's never too early to start networking with people that have the jobs that you might want to have one day. I really laughed at this point because I have a little brother who is, he just turned 14 and I'm literally talking to him about internships now. So when I think it was Katie who said the point about like you're a freshman in college and it's too early to start doing internships. Like I know that even high school internships are starting to become a thing now. So yeah, I would just say, you know, if you're one of those people that you know what you want to do, definitely, you know, you can start putting in the work early. But also, I would second that with like if you happen to be somebody that you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's fine too. But you still want to kind of start setting the foundation to make sure that you'll have, um, you know, a strong foundation for a good future. Like I was somebody that I never knew exactly what I wanted to do. I just kind of knew that I really like what Elizabeth said about the like, I just knew I needed to make some money to support my family. I definitely kind of relate to that. And so I started my career in working for Freddie Mac doing finance. And then I did a 2-year rotation program where I got to rotate through different parts of the company. And even at the end of those 2 years, I still wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. So I went and tried my hand at consulting, where I got to try like a little bit of a bunch of different things. And at the end of that, that's how I ended up finding my way in product management. So that I also work in that field. So even for me, like it took me like a little while to figure out exactly, you know, where I thought was the best fit for me. So I think that's what I would say.
Elizabeth, your piece of advice.
I feel like my piece of advice was more relevant to a non-COVID. Are you all back in school? Are you back in on campus with like meeting with professors and stuff? My favorite thing that I did in college, which also helps with your grades, I'm just saying, is I like love becoming BFFs with the professors. I would take them to lunch. My school had a take your professor to lunch program. If you don't have one, you should try to look into it. They might. or propose it, because then you get one, free lunch, which is great, and two, taking your professor to lunch can go one of two ways. It could be really awkward, which is fine. I've had some of those interactions. They're literally paid to teach students and hang out with us. So really do that. Or two, you could learn something really interesting and you can make a lifelong friend that will, be there to mentor you forever. A lot of my conversations, like I said, were super awkward. I didn't get anything out of them except that in this 400 auditorium, they knew my name. In other occasions, it made it easier for me to go to office hours and actually ask for help, because usually I was terrified of asking for help. And it made me more confident in asking the stupid questions. Like towards the end of college, like something I just wish I had is like, I would literally just be like, what is going on? And I would be in the front row. And because the professor knew me, they'd be like, oh my God, Elizabeth. And then they'd explain it to me. So it's like this 400-person lecture became a one-on-one. And that is called expert manipulation. And if one thing that I'm good on, that's what it is. And so I think you guys should definitely do that. You should definitely take your professors to lunch. I'm still friends with a couple of professors, and like I'll text them and say happy birthday, and I'll ask them for coffee recommendations, and so you never know. I think it's a great way to make it personal. I think the only way that I was able to succeed a lot of the time was through external pressure. And I felt that like I needed somebody to disappoint. So if I knew the professors, I wouldn't want to disappoint them. And so I would try harder in the class also. But these might all be me problems, but that is my number one recommendation.
I like it. So I'm hearing, and I like how Gino is always, whenever I talk to Gino, he always has a plan. He's like, and this is what I'm going to do next. And if that doesn't work out, well, then I have a plan B. And so even though maybe right now you don't know what your career interest might be, or you're thinking of 5 different things like Elizabeth at times, an internship can easily be you trying something and crossing it off and saying, okay, well, now I know I don't like this. And you're able to reroute and continue to plan. And as you're going through college, you'll realize time is of the essence. And so the earlier you can start getting used to that, the better. And then another thing Elizabeth brought up, which is something I wish I did in college, is advocate for yourself and start going to things and asking questions. I remember I'd be in my chem class and I would sit there quietly my first year, and I really suffered. My grades literally suffered because I was too afraid to ask a question. And so those are a few points I took away from that. Any student have a question so far for either Elizabeth or Gino? Maybe you can take their advice and ask a question. This is probably the safest space or place to mess up or to be nervous and to ask a question is now. Isabella?
I have a question for both of you actually in regards to like, I know just as a first generation student, I don't know if any of you share this, but it's like, I feel like what Gino and Elizabeth are speaking to is that financial obligation to support our families. And I'm curious to see if your situations were different. Would you have gone a different like career route, or would you have stuck with what you have done now?
Do you want to go first, or I can go? I don't care.
You can go first.
I don't know. I feel like my brain is more creative than finance. I don't think I necessarily would have gone into finance. That being said, my school was very, very pre-professional. People only went into finance or consulting for the most part. Even if you were like a humanities person and whatnot, it's not like I saw other routes of what I could do. I don't think I would have done great at nonprofit. I hate that kind of bureaucracy. Like when I was younger, I wanted to go into politics and stuff like that. But now I realize how terrifying that is, especially like because you kind of are required to have this like crazy social presence on topics, and I'm scared of having opinions. So I don't know. I don't think finance was the best fit, but I do think that I'm in a place that I like now. And so I don't necessarily regret all of it, because I got to where I needed to be, but it really depends. Like, I didn't have the liberties to like go be like a film student and produce movies. Like, I can't be an assistant and not get paid for 3 years. So I don't know.
Yeah, this is a really good question that I hadn't really thought about until you asked it. But I think if I'm being brutally honest, I probably wouldn't have just start out. Uh, so my side passion is I'm a music producer. And so if it were up to me right out of high school, I probably would have done something like just gone and done music full time. And realistically, had I done that, who knows what would have happened? But the likelihood of me not having a lot of money and being pretty broke, trying to kind of rough it out, those first couple of years would have been extremely high. So I think at the time, the safest bet, not just for my family, but also for myself, was to do something that was a little bit more risk averse and kind of set myself up. And now, present day, I have my day job and I'm doing music on the side. And it's actually really great because I don't have to worry about making sure that, my bills are paid or that I have a place to live or that, like, I can't eat. So I think, I'm happy with where I am right now. And yeah, I'm kind of glad that I didn't do that.
Any other question from a student?
I have a question. What was the biggest transitional issue you guys faced when you started college?
Gino, do you want to lead with that one?
Yeah, I can go first. There was a few. I think the biggest one was probably this concept. I think that's currently being referred to as imposter syndrome. So when I got to college, I would walk around. I distinctively remember walking around my college campus, which was pretty big, and just kind of looking around, and first and foremost, not really seeing a lot of people that look like me. So that in itself is kind of hard. But then also like being in, because when you're in your junior senior year, at that point you're pretty decided on your major. The classes move from being like 400-person lectures to kind of more intimate, like 30 individuals in the class and stuff. And so having those kind of more intimate conversations and back and forth, I kind of realized really quickly that, man, a lot of these people, we just do not share similar backgrounds, whether it's the socioeconomic thing, whether it's like how we grew up, whether it's like family dynamics. Even like one thing that I think is really common in first generation students, especially those of us that have siblings and we're kind of the older ones. I feel like we find ourselves stepping into parental roles a lot, and that's something that isn't really kind of as expected as from people in other communities. And so just it was a wider range of stuff, but really just kind of like feeling like, man, do I really belong here? And kind of even me questioning whether this was the best path for me. For me, what really helped me out was at University of Maryland, there was a minor that was available. It was titled U.S. Latino Studies. If any of you, whether you're in school now or when you get there, if they have this program, because I think it is growing, I'd recommend even taking just one class as an elective if you can. But the entire study is pretty much dedicated towards educating individuals on like the history of U.S. intervention in the different Latin American countries, how we all ended up here, what the experiences of our generations before us in the U.S. has been like, tackling things like race, gender, all sorts of stuff. And when I went to one of those classes, I remember walking in, and pretty much every other student in the class was either Latino, Hispanic, Latinx. So that was like one of the first times on college campus that I remember just like looking around and I'm like, oh my God, there's like a class that I actually feel like I belong, or like I can connect with a bunch of people that have similar experiences as me, because we were like all first generation, all first ones in our family to even like make it to college. So that for me was really cool.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I had a similar experience with a Latin American art class where it wasn't all Latinos, but it was just like, I was like, wow, I don't know, I learned so much about my own culture that I was like, I can't believe I was deprived of this for so long. It was like a big call out. But as far as like transitional things, like financial duress, like trying to figure out how, we're going to pay for things, like what jobs I need to get, just like, I feel like you're running, when I got to college, I didn't even know how to study. Like high school is very different from college. I didn't know that I actually had to read my textbooks. And also I had like undiagnosed ADHD, which explains why I couldn't read anything. And so I was just like kind of learning on the go, very much not partaking in like healthy habits. I was just like forcing myself to stay up all night to finish things. And I got it done, but it's just like those are the main transitional things. And I wish that I would have asked for like help earlier, or that certain things had been identified earlier, because then I could have gotten support for it. I did experience like some sense of imposter syndrome, especially in like the first classes where I felt like other students would kind of question why I was there and why I didn't know things that they all seemed to know. But eventually I just kind of realized that they were all just not great people, and that I was actually a lot smarter than them in a lot of different ways, and that a lot of them didn't want to ask the questions. So I became very comfortable in being like the girl that were like she's just dumb, but I would ask all the questions. And like at the end of the day, it made the teacher slow down and it made everybody learn better. And I just stopped caring, because I was like, I don't care about you, I care about my education, I care about how I do, and I care about my relationship with this professor, and making sure that they see me as somebody that is worthy of learning, because I deserve to be here more than the people who were you know their parents paid for like building XYZ. So, which was most of my class. But yeah.
Yeah, and then I think both of you mentioned you both have siblings. For our Mission Scholar students, do any of you have younger siblings? I don't know if there's a head nod or a thumbs up if you're not sharing your screen. Okay, so for Elizabeth and Gino, you both have siblings. I also have a sibling that's also on this call. And in addition to, financial responsibility you have with our families, you do end up adopting, in a way, your younger siblings. So what was that experience like? And if a mission scholar is going through that same experience, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, so I literally almost adopted my brother. So my brother is 7 years younger than me. It's similar to Estefania and Isabella's age gap, I'm guessing. Um, I don't know how like young your guys' siblings are, but I think in many communities you adopt any kid that you see. You just kind of want to make sure that they don't go through the same stuff that you did. Um, for me, it was always making sure that he was on track, that he knew certain opportunities were available to him, and nagging as much as I can. But I also like went through phases where I was like, I cannot talk to my family. Like I cannot speak with you guys. I do not have time for this. And I just like would go off the grid and like let them message me on every app, because I had to figure my own stuff out. And I think that you guys, the most important thing is figuring out when you need to tune out your family, because there's going to be a time and a place that that's going to happen, so that you can get ahead and later come back to your siblings or the people in your family that you care about. My brother, I did eventually, like as soon as I graduated and got my first job, I brought him back from Mexico to the US, and he was a sophomore in high school, and I pushed him through New York's horrible public school system. And he is now in college, I just dropped him off a couple of weeks ago. Estefania came with me, and that was probably one of the most gratifying experiences of my life, because I got to see my little brother full, like I saw it happen, and like all of the things we did made sense, and like they somehow work together, and he's going to get an education. And now I can tell him these same things. He's like, I want to drop this class because there's too much writing. And I'm like, well, that's all of your classes. And he's like, well, there's only sophomores. I'm the only freshman. I was like, does it look like I care? Like, I really don't. I like, so it's just making sure that he is braver than I was, and making sure that he knows that he's going to be okay, because he is. And every single class is going to be tough. I mean, you're in college. He's in a liberal arts. I was like, everything's going to involve like a lot of reading. So just get over that and start doing the work. But yeah, it's like a nagging thing, but it's all with love.
And then Gino, your brother's slightly younger, so I'd like to hear how
Yeah.
you approach
He
that.
literally just turned 14. He's in eighth grade. I've been parenting him for what seems like forever now. For this topic, I feel like I have like three key points that I would want to add to the conversation. One of them would probably be to just assess the expectations that you're putting on your younger siblings. I think when you're kind of the oldest, or you're like, you've worked yourself to a certain level of success in this life, you kind of know what it takes to get there. And obviously, you want the same for your younger siblings. In fact, you would probably want them to do even better than you did. But you have to keep in mind that, obviously they're younger, and they're, you don't want to like overwork them to the point where they're kind of like overstressed, or like that's kind of like like their entire life. They're kids at the end of the day, and they should still have some fun. Second would be, watch the expectations that you're putting on yourself. I think you have your life, and like I said earlier, a lot of the times as older siblings, we kind of just assume these parental roles. And so when you're still kind of navigating your own responsibilities, and you're taking on like this additional responsibilities, it can be very easy to become stressed and overwork yourself, and kind of let it bring you down. So just kind of make sure you're not working yourself too much. And the last would be probably just to kind of be mindful of the fact that you're not necessarily from the same generation. And so what I mean by that is, like, we grew up a certain way. We being like, people that are kind of close to my age, but we grew up a certain way in terms of like work expectations, home expectations, child expectations. And it can be easy to want those same things of the people that come after you. But you have to keep in mind, like, between the whole all the information that we have available to us now, the technology that's out there now, how much time they spend on their computers, on their phones, video games, like all that kind of, like, it's just different. And so you can't, what I'm trying to say is, you can't assess it like exactly one to one. You have to keep in mind all these additional factors that have come into play since you were that age, and kind of assess appropriately. So
Gino,
that'd probably be what I say.
do you mind sharing what your brother's side business is currently and what he's working on at 14?
So my brother, he is a graphic designer. I had so basically, like, just to give some context to this story, when he was in sixth grade, he's been killing school. Like, he's always been a straight A student, but he would pretty much come home from school, do his work, and then play video games from the time that he got home until he went to bed. And I kind of noticed this behavior, and I was just like, you can't just play video games all day, every day. Like, you need to do something else. And so I laid out a few things that he could do, and he ended up choosing coding and doing graphic design. So he took on graphic design, and he, watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials, took Udemy classes, and he's actually gotten so good that he's starting to commission people, like, for work. So he'll do like flyers and logos and like stuff like that, just to earn some like money on the side. And he's, doing coding as kind of like a side project sort of thing. So and that's kind of what I was talking about when I was saying like the expectations. Like, I recognize that he's kind of performing a little bit higher than other people his age, but at the same time, you don't want to overwork them to the point where they're like, this, I don't have any fun, or I miss my video games, like all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Any other question from students?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go you.
So I don't know if any of you would have this, but sometimes I have like performance anxiety when taking an important test, like a midterm or a final. And maybe at the end of the day, I don't end up getting an F that I'm worrying about, but it does take a toll on my mental health and stuff like that. So how do you guys deal with it?
I would recommend. Um, I hated the school, like psychiatry center. It sucked, but I did go because they provided some help, and um, it was a lot of like stress managing techniques. But I realized that like a lot of the things that I had gone through had led to like a social anxiety disorder. I didn't know about nobody brought up the ADHD, but like if they had, I would have gotten time and a half on exams. Um, but it's like making sure that you really take advantage of resources like that if your school has them. I think a lot of our community, and when I say our, I think the Latino community, there's a lot of like stigma still surrounding it. It took my parents a while to just like understand that like these were actual things that had happened. And I had a lot of testing anxiety. I didn't do well no matter how much I studied sometimes because of how stressed I would be. But I think towards the end, because I was managing my symptoms a lot better, it became a lot easier to manage. And I'm not going to say it's going to get easier because it's always going to be something that's present, but there are things you can do to manage them, which is great. um, but yeah, talk to somebody, hopefully like get evaluated with that. Talk to your professors about it. That's why I think it's great to speak with professors. Be like, look, this is really affecting me. I will caveat that with like, some professors suck and they don't care, and that makes me care less about their exams. But in one way, that's like another way to de-stress myself, because I'm like, well, like, excuse my, but I'm like, fuck this professor. And so I care less about the anxiety, and it's more like rage as I start doing an exam. But yeah, I think I'm always going to suck at exams for a lot of reasons. And I think that getting help is the best thing you can do, especially early on. Like the earlier, the better, because symptoms can get worse, and it's better to manage them and stop them early than later.
Yeah, I don't really have too much more to add here. Just echoing that, about reaching out for help. I know when I was in school, the main benefit was getting that additional time to work on your assignments and your exams. So it's very much a thing. I think it is up to like an extra time and a half. So if that's like what you need, I would definitely recommend seeing if there's a way to make it happen.
Also, something to note here is when you go to college, there is, and you will all likely be eligible for, or it'll come with the package, which is healthcare that comes through the university. So if you're feeling sick, like if you're physically sick, there are resources on campus that you can use. For those at Berkeley, I think there's a Ting Center where you can go to. And then there's also mental health, and there's food assistant programs. So there's so many other things that feed into maybe what anxiety might be or stress. And so make sure you research those different programs on your campus because they do help. For the record, food pantry and food insecurity is a big thing. And there were times where I could not afford to eat out. And so I would just go to the food pantry on campus, and they treat it like a grocery store. Like you walk in, you feel normal once you get past the points that you don't have to check out and pay. But you just go in, grab 3 or 4 items. I think they limit you to a certain amount, and you can eat and sustain yourself. And those resources are there for you, so take advantage of them.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
When it comes to your health or any sort of like food type things, advocate for yourself. Do not feel embarrassed, because there is a lot of systemic discrimination in both the healthcare industries and like all sorts of these. And it is not your problem that they have these issues or biases. If you think something is wrong and you're not seeing anything like improve, like This is something I wish I knew. I wish I talked to somebody about how much I struggled to study. I wish I had told somebody. And I wish that I had pushed the mental health practitioners that I thought knew best to evaluate me, or that I had known, right? But like, if you think, like, literally the reason I got diagnosed was because the TikTok algorithm told me that I had ADHD, and I was like, this is weird. And so I talked to somebody and brought it up, and they're like, no, I don't think so. And that was my therapist. And so I talked to my psychiatrist. It ended up being that, right? Like, you need to advocate for yourself in any sort of medical thing. Like, do not be afraid to like just get angry and talk to somebody and jump hoops. Like, I am a big fan of going Karen. Like, I can turn on my like Karen voice and get what I want now. And I really encourage you all to embody that Karen voice when you need to.
I'd love to echo that, especially on the mental health side too. It can be slow on college campuses too. So really, if you're struggling with it, like, just try and find at least where the resources are. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer. And as a lit coach too, I know we're mostly career focused, but you can't find that right internship if you're not feeling well. And my mom teaches mental health first aid. And so if anybody needs help kind of navigating those systems that again are just so convoluted, I'm happy to help with resources for that too.
So we've touched on a few topics, whether it's financial stress, transitioning, imposter syndrome. Gosh, what else? We've been covering healthcare. There's so many layers to college, and then you're still expected to perform, and you're still expected to have certain internships. And so knowing that it's okay to talk about those things and that you have this resource of Mission Scholars is important. And that's what the LIT program is set out to be. And I know Elizabeth and Gino both had in their college life a version of a LIT program where you could reach out to someone or they could assist you in your career. So how, Elizabeth and Gino, what value would you put on a program like this that can help you transition from college to career? And how did you use it while you were in college?
Yeah, I think my main one was probably HSF. And I think there was the mentors who taught you how to clean up, right? Like, I think you find the mentor that helps you with the business aspect of like sourcing internships, how to interview. There's a certain way to do everything. What I've learned is that there is a formula to everything that there is in this world. And as long as you can figure out and master that formula, you can get what you want or what you need, or get into the place where you need to get to be pulled up, if that makes sense. That is how HSF helped me. This program can help you in the same way, I think, as far as like preparing you for how to interview, how to write a cover letter, how to do certain things, and how to like present yourself, right? There's also like the peer element, right? I know COVID has made it super difficult, but like leverage your peer group, right? I think that like I met Estefania through this program, and now like I know that if I wanted to, I could go hang out with Estefania and her family whenever I want. Like, her parents have come and visited, right? Like, she is more than just a person to like ask for advice. She is my friend. And that makes it so much easier to share stories, to learn from each other, to grow from each other. So use that as your leverage. Like, you're in a group of people who are either going to college or already in college, and you're going through the same like hurdles. So it's just kind of nice to have that in your background, that you're not alone. So like, just enjoy that camaraderie, I think, and like not feeling like you're one and the same, or like the only brown kid in the white class. Just like, you know, you're not, and you're doing great. So I don't know. I think it's just a great extra support. But I know I just ramble a lot, and I'm so thankful that Gino is also here, because I feel like he actually like says steps and I don't know what I'm saying.
Gino, would you like to tie it all together for us?
I'll do my best. So for me, it was a program called PAID, PADE, Promoting Achievement in Diversity in Economics. It was founded by Dr. Goldberg at UMD. So she basically noticed that there was a trend within the economics field that it was significantly underrepresented with anybody that didn't, identify as white. And so she applied for a grant through Maryland, basically was like, give me some money so that I can use that money to create additional resources for these kids that are underrepresented. She got the money, she made the program, and she put out this blog post on our economics website, like, hey, I'm starting this program. If you, identify as this and you want some extra help, let me know. And I saw that literally my very first semester when I transferred from community college to UMD. And I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but like I know me growing up, somewhat traditional. It was like I think even if it's subconsciously, we're kind of told like don't ask for help, like try to figure everything out on your own. And especially I think too, like being a guy, sometimes it's like you can't show your emotions, you can't show like signs of weakness. And but I really needed the help. So I remember reading the blog post and I was just like, wow, this sounds like it could really help me out. So it felt weird. I think just that initial extension of like asking for help, but I submitted the application. She reached out to me. She told me to come to her office. I met her and she took me on as like one of 15 students in that cohort. And it was amazing. Like she gave us so many resources, tutors, books, scholarships, the benefit of just being in a community with 14 other people that are in a similar place in life as you and are trying to kind of take it to that next step. It's literally one of the biggest blessings I ever got in my life. I think all of you are already blessed just being in this call right now because it means you're already within reach of mission scholars. So I think to close out, I would just say, and it's something we've been talking about all night, but like do not be afraid to ask for help. Any type of help, whether it's mental, financial, nutrition, in your classes, getting that extra academic help, because it is just so important that you kind of finish out this chapter of your life in the best way possible. And if you need that extra help to make it happen, then there's no shame in asking for that help. In fact, I would say it kind of be a big L if you didn't ask for the help.
It's almost relieving being able to just say, I don't know. And to this day at work, I continue to say that. And that's how you learn more. And I think Elizabeth brought up something. Your peers are going to be and your friends, AKA you're starting off in Mission Scholars, you are all going to be your best help and resource. When I first started at Freddie Mac, Gino did not even know me. He messaged me through a chat and he said, hi. And I was like, who is Eugene Rojas? And then it turns out, oh, it's Gino Rojas. I was like, okay, cool. And he took me under his wing and brought me into the group at Freddie Mac, the Latino employee resource group. And that's how I got my footing at my job in a new city in DC that I had no idea about. And Elizabeth, I remember, I think I had met you through a program. I don't even know how, but I had reached out to you through GroupMe because that was the only way I could contact anyone was through this massive GroupMe chat. And I was like, hey, I'm applying to all these finance internships. I was pre-med. I had no idea what I was doing. And she sent me her Google Doc of how she was preparing for her interviews. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So then I could start building my own questions and responses and how to practice. So really leverage your friends and your peers around you. And Gino did that while he was in college with the paid program. So there's ways to do that with your high school resources and friends here. And as you get to college, you'll find those communities for yourself there. So I think we have about 10 minutes, which means maybe 2 or 3 questions left. And then maybe our panelists can give any more takeaways. But does anyone have other questions they would like to ask? Someone raised their hand, but I lost it. Larry?
Larry.
Yeah, I was wondering, how did you balance your academics with a healthy social life while you were in college?
Gino, do you want to start with that one?
I'm going to be super transparent with this
You
question.
should be.
I did not sleep a lot during college. I would not recommend this to other people. Definitely make sure you get your sleep. But so for me, I was working about 35 hours as a waiter during college between Friday and Sunday. So Friday, Saturday and Sunday, I was going and working at this restaurant, and that's how I was like paying my rent, buying food, paying my bills, just kind of making my way through. That means that the only times that I had to do school and social life were Monday through Thursday. So I would go to all my classes. I would try to do all of my work as quickly as possible. I try to stay on top. And I also had leadership roles on campus too. So I took on like these additional extracurriculars, went to events, held meetings, like did my work in the evening. And I would kind of just go out at nighttime, not every day, but like a couple of times a week, I'd get invited out by friends. Next thing I know, it's like late at night. I'm like barely making it back, and then still making it way to my 8 a.m. in the morning. So it's, I don't know. I think like in college, it's just easier to kind of do that kind of stuff. You have the energy. Um, I hope that helps. I mean, I think the biggest thing is like when you want to make something happen, you will. So if you want to work, you want to stay on top of all your classes, you want to have the extracurriculars and have leadership roles, you want to still go out at night and have fun with your friends or anything like that, like you're gonna find a way to make it happen. You just have to make sure you're putting in the work.
Yeah, I didn't manage that very well. I got sick all the time because like my immune system would drop because I would just not sleep. And that was because I was in probably too many clubs that I thought were going to help build my resume, and stuff like that, which I eventually like all dropped. I think the best thing for me, like you're going to all like crash and burn at your own rate. And I think it's just part of the process, unfortunately. Just make sure you go to the doctor when you get sick or something happens. But I think the best thing for me was just if you guys can study abroad, study abroad. Because it kind of takes you out of that like really weird like college social environment where everybody's trying to prove something and people care about the wrong things, or you care about hanging out with certain people, and then you get to go abroad and I don't know how it is for everybody, but like my grades barely counted, and so I was just like hanging out in a cool city the whole time. And I came back and I was like, I hate all these people, I hate all these clubs. I just quit everything and had like the best senior year because I hung out with like my 3 friends and I had the best time. And then I actually like started learning in classes because I was not as stressed about them. I was just more like casual with professors. Like I understood what they were saying better. Everything was at your own pace. And it's just like, I wish I could have had that when I started, but everybody puts different sorts of pressure on yourself. So I think you'll figure out what matters and what doesn't eventually. And I think that's a journey everybody kind of figures out on their own.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of your own pressure. Like I remember I was having a phone call with my dad before my bio test, like the night before, and it just brought up all the family problems and everything going on. And so I was so unsettled, and I went into that bio class not well. Like I did not do well on that exam. And it wasn't because of how well I studied or anything, it was the environment I'm in. So internal pressures, and then also hopefully your first year will be, I think, academically tough, but you'll adjust to it and you'll get used to it and you'll learn how you study. And so then it'll free up your time to then be able to do other things, whether that's sleep or go out. But there will be times where then you can relieve um, that internal pressure that you're putting on yourself by just getting better at doing college. Um, I think we can take one more
Just
question.
sorry,
Go
so
ahead,
real
Gina.
quick on that one, I wanted to add on the whole club thing, and others can feel free to correct me if they disagree. But I think with the club thing, like one advice I'd say is like it's almost better to pick one or two clubs that you actually really want to be involved in and get a leadership position in that club than it is to just be like a general member of a bunch of different clubs. Because what you're looking to do is as you progress through your freshman to your junior and senior year, you want to get like some type of leadership role in that club so you can put it on your resume, so that when you go to interview for your internships and they ask you about like, hey, tell me about a time where you were a leader in this club or something like that, you can refer back to that experience and say, I did this, we held this many events, I changed whatever. But if you're just a general member just kind of pulling up to the events, you're not going to be able to have that on your resume to talk about.
Another thing, sorry, would be take and study what you want and like in college. there is like a big change in how recruiting happens. Like they want history majors, they want chemistry majors, and that's like for finance or tech roles. Like literally study what you love and what brings you the most joy, because you will get the best grades for it. You'll keep your GPA high. And there is always, what I've learned is there is always a way to spin your story and make it fit for whatever role you're looking at later. Like you would be surprised the amount of things that have come out of my mouth that have gotten me, like they have nothing to do with like the roles that I ended up taking, but you just like charm them. You're like, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so study what you love. Like, I think maybe if I like went back, I might have studied like art history, but probably, I don't know, maybe not, or something else, right? But it's just like, do what you like. Don't feel pressured to like study finance. No offense to Stefania, but like,
Hey, I like numbers.
I hate finance. I hate it.
She's just not a numbers person, that's all.
Yeah, I think I'm dyslexic. But don't study finance because you think it'll help you. It's not going to help you if you're not doing great at it. Study whatever you want. Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions? I think we're close to wrapping up. So if there's burning questions, raise your hand or I'll call on someone. So have a
Stephanie,
question ready.
I actually got a question. Vanessa had to leave a little bit early,
Okay.
but she messaged me a question she wants to ask
Sure.
the panelists. If you could have done something differently in college, what would it have been?
Right. Gina, do you want to take that one first?
I honestly think I would have been a little bit more diligent about applying for more scholarships. I thought scholarships were like a one and done situation where like you pretty much, you're getting them as you're coming into university. And if you don't, you don't. But there are scholarships that are happening on, sometimes as frequently as a per semester basis. So I think if I had applied to more scholarships, I probably would have gotten more. And that money would have really helped me not have to work so much on the weekends. And then I could have been, going back to that whole school and having fun balance, I could have been able to enjoy myself a little bit more, not be as stressed about making sure I'm going to perform on this exam and also making sure my rent is paid. I wouldn't advise that on anybody. If there's ways to, apply for that additional help through scholarship means and grants, and you think you can get them, to definitely do that. I feel like there's so much money that's left on the table, especially for people that like share similar backgrounds as us. So, just I think that'd be the one thing I do different and would advise everybody to do. Just make sure you're keeping tabs on what scholarships are out there and try to apply to as many as you can.
Yeah. And there's certain scholarships that will be more competitive than others, and you'll have to do some digging. But Gina, would you recommend a certain place to start for scholarship search?
No, I mean, for me, I think I remember my school had a website where they posted them. So I'm sure, every school probably has that internal resource, and then you can just probably do uh, generic Google searches. And also keep in mind, like, you may do a lot that are like kind of smaller amounts, $200, $500 here and there. But if you're doing a lot of them, that money will really add up and can make a big difference in your semester. So don't always think you have to go for the big ones. Just do a bunch of the smaller ones, and I'm sure that'll help you too.
Yeah. And for some of the students, I know Mission Scholars, you're going to be done with your college applications or even in between, and we're going to have you apply to different scholarship programs. And so definitely pay attention to those. Some of those can really set you up for a less financially stressed college experience. And winter breaks are great time when you're coming home to just research and apply to scholarships. I know that's something I did and was able to graduate debt-free from college as well. Elizabeth, is there anything you would change or do differently in college?
One, it would be like my first semester, like I did so bad my first year of college. Like I had like a 2.7 GPA. Like it was not, like I couldn't even qualify for HSF stuff. like which is a 3.0 minimum. And I was so hard on myself. Like I just beat myself up about it. And it ended up being just fine. I think it's everybody's at their own pace. Like I wish I hadn't been so like defeated because of that. Like it just killed my like sense of confidence. It really made me feel like I was dumb. And there was obviously like a lot going on. So I wish I had like not been as like obsessive about that. I also wish I would have leveraged, like I went to a really great school. Like I wish I would have leveraged some of the people I could have met there, some of like the professors doing interesting projects. Um, Now I'm like a big fan of cold emailing and cold calling people. Like I don't care. Like I literally am shameless. And if I want to, like if I see this, like this professor did a cool podcast, like I'm gonna email them about it. And I'm just gonna be like, yo, let's get coffee, let's get lunch. Like I'm curious about this. And I think I'm just like very much like entrepreneurial in that sense. Like I like now looking back at it, I'm like, oh, I could have done this and that. But it's also coming from like I've been through a couple of years in the business world, and I think some things are interesting, and now I don't have access to them. So if you see somebody doing cool research or doing cool work on the side or whatever, like reach out to them. Who cares? You never know what it'll lead to.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we're going to go through the LIP program. So Katie is going to send out more information on our different sessions, but we're hoping that through these sessions, you can either have starting tools to be able to do what Elizabeth and Gino have been mentioning. So I think a few key points here is like your network, your resources, and being able to advocate for yourself. And so hopefully through your time in college and then support through the LIP program, you feel more comfortable in that way. If there's any last question, I think we can take it. If not, oh, I thought someone had asked a question. Okay. If you have, oh, and then panelists, I think Katie is sending here. If you have any books that you would add to our students reading list as just recommendations or interesting books, there's a link in the chat. But I guess I'll let both Elizabeth and Gino give last remarks. Something I got away from just getting to hear and learn from you both again is at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. And I wish someone told me that when I was a freshman, that I was going to be okay when I failed my first chemistry test. And that's not something someone next door is going to tell you in college, but I think Elizabeth and Gino have told you no matter what goes on, you're going to be okay. Anything else, Elizabeth or Gino?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with what you just said, but I would just say, keep your head up. At the end of the day, we're all human, and you're gonna have life happening to you at the same time that you're doing college. So, you're gonna experience so many different things in your life. Maybe some of those things are hardships, and whether it's something as basic as like you didn't perform as well as you wanted to on an exam, or something as serious as like you got some like family stuff going on. But I think like regardless of that, just kind of keep your head up. Remember that there is a purpose for you. You made it to where you are for a reason, and just to kind of keep pushing through. And like Estefania said, at the end of you're going to be okay.
I would say embrace the chaos. Like I think it's really funny now because like I've done things that make people look up to me, which is really weird because I'm like a very much like a chaotic person. Like I feel like I live, yeah, like I live a life of extremes, like really good and then like really bad things will happen to me, and I think I'm just cursed or something, or there's like a ghost in my apartment that likes to like mess with me. And so I think it's just like remember that even people you look up to are going through stuff. There's this book that I added to the recommendation list called The Undocumented Americans. If you guys haven't read it, read it. But she speaks about like children of immigrants or like immigrants that like go through this like crazy trauma, or just like, and I mean like the trauma of like living with your crazy family and like having to deal with all these like weird things that like other kids don't go through necessarily, and how it might alter like our chemicals in our brains, and how we're just like this massive band of like mutants who are just going through the world with like all these issues, but it's like, I don't know, being a mutant sounds kind of cool to me. And so like embrace that like weird chemistry happening. It makes you who you are, but don't make it your whole life. Just like keep going, and you're gonna be just fine. Just do what you love.
All right. Oh, this was great. Thank you so much. I think Katie has some last few comments and then we'll wrap up.
Yes, thank you both, Gino and Elizabeth. I wish I could go through college again with all this information. Everyone on the call, you all are so lucky to learn from their experiences and to incorporate it into your own life in college. And for our high school students on the call, hopefully this gets you excited and serves as your motivation in those long hours of writing essays and submitting applications. This is why you're doing it, so that you have these amazing experiences like this. From college to career. And that's what we're here to support you with. I'm going to share my screen really quickly and just wrap it up for our college students on the call. We have some action items. Action items is, we think it's way cooler than calling it homework. This is stuff you get to do, not stuff you have to do. So something that Elizabeth really touched on was connections with your professors. They're there. Oftentimes no one comes into their office hours. Those are times, even if you don't have a question, just starting to make those connections with your professors can be hugely beneficial. It can lead to internships or letters of recommendation, or just establishing positive rapport so that when you do have a question or something you're confused about, you know who to go to. So if you look at September here, by the end of this month, we hope you have a draft of a cover letter and resume. We'll be talking more about that next week. Attend one professor office hour to practice introducing yourself and telling your story, practice professional communication. And then we want you to attend one club activity or club fair, which sounds like most of you already have. And Gino, I think your advice was spot on. Don't spread yourself too thin. It's quality over quantity. And really follow your heart and what you're passionate about. And oftentimes, for me at least, that's where I found my people is, going to these clubs that I was really passionate about. And that's where I met a lot of my friends that freshman year. And then this last column over here is what you can, when you schedule your next meeting with your college coach, here's what you can follow up with them about. And they're here to support you too, making sure you're checking off all these action items. So I put that in the chat also for all the college students. And then Kim, did you have your hand up?
You did it?
Oh,
you do.
I downloaded this new Zoom thing and now it thinks it's really smart. When I'm talking with my hands, it thinks I want to raise my hand. So I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, well, that's all I have. I want to give a huge thank you to Elizabeth and Gino. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all your insight and wisdom. And we recorded this session, so we'll be sharing it with the rest of our mission scholars who had bio classes and tests tonight. But this will be something we reference back for a long time to come. And we hope, for all you students, we hope you gained a lot from this and are just as excited about the LIT program as we are. So we look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you everyone for taking time out of your week to join us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Bye.